Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. I'm going to be talking about astrology and betrayal and deception. And the thing is, I'm going to talk about some basics associated with this and maybe go a little bit deeper into it in the video. But first of all, of course, the zodiac sign of Pisces, I think, is unequivocally, would have to be the most deceptive of the signs. If somebody's got the sun, moon, or ascendant in Pisces, especially if it's very adversely aspected, they could be more prone to the fine art of deception, and also be more susceptible to it, because Pisces, I would say, is the most gullible of the signs. Now, you look at the zodiac sign Cancer. Cancer is not really necessarily deceptive or duplicitous, but the zodiac sign Cancer can be very susceptible to thievery, because they could be, Cancer can be somewhat impressionable. And when you have that impressionable energy, gullibility can be tied into it, I would say. Remember, keep in mind that the zodiac sign Gemini often falls on the 12th house cusp in a solar or natal chart for the zodiac sign Cancer. Gemini can be associated with thieves. And of course, the 12th house it does govern hidden adversaries, and it's the house of deception. So you could do the math as far as that goes. Now, the thing too is there's other signs too, that have certain deceptive qualities, but not notorious for them, like Pisces. I would say the other three mutable signs, which of course are Gemini, Virgo, and Sagittarius, can have some propensity toward that fine art of deception and even betrayal, because they are very mutable. They are very shifty. They're shifting energy. They're very changeable, and they could be more led, manipulated by other people easily. They are more easily coerced by others and manipulated more so than the other signs. I would say on average they do have that strong mutable quality. They are the ones, sadly, and I don't want to be harsh about this, I'm saying on average, that would have that proclivity to turn on a person on a dime, basically, more so than the other signs. So people that have the sun, moon, or ascendant in any of these signs mentioned can have a greater propensity toward this. And if you know somebody that has that energy, you have to be a little bit careful with those people. But this is not the stereotype by any means. A lot of that is especially when that energy is strongly adversely affected in one's natal chart. Now, the thing about it is you look at this, and remember, Gemini is the sign of the twins. So Gemini, maybe especially after Pisces, can be known for that art of illusion and confusion, because Gemini symbolizes the twins. Gemini can go either way. When people talk about like schizophrenic behavior, they talk about, a figurative sense, like with Gemini, this strong contradictory energy. I'm not talking about literal schizophrenia, but Gemini can be very contradictory, can go one way one moment, then they can go the other way. It's very vacillating energy. Now, people that have, and it's not limited to the zodiac signs, of course, a lot of it has to do with the Neptune placement, 12th house placements. Neptune, how it's aspected. If Neptune in a chart is severely afflicted and makes a number of adverse aspected, this could be the person that could be that quintessential deceiver, and the one that can be very strongly deceived. Where Neptune is placed in one's horoscope can show that area or sector of life where one may be more susceptible to deception, and also where Pisces falls on, and what house cusp Pisces falls on, unless it's intercepted in the chart. Now, in my case, I have Neptune in my 7th house cusp. So, and it's in Scorpio, the sign connected with manipulation. It shows me that I have very strong difficulty deciphering and ascertaining the motives, the intentions of others, the character composition of others in general, people that are that I have significant connections with, relationships with. And another thing, and also you have it again by that, in the sign of Scorpio, even though it's generational, that may play a little bit of a role as well. Scorpio, again, is connected with manipulation. You look at also again, going back to where where Pisces falls on the house cusp in your chart. What house cusp does Pisces fall in your chart unless it's intercepted? Now, mine actually is intercepted in my 11th house of friends and acquaintances. So it indicates to me that I could be very susceptible. I'm sorry. Pisces is intercepted in my 11th house of friends. Sorry about that. And I'm also going through transit Neptune in my 11th house on top of that. So what it tells me, I mean, you're talking about energy that could be very deceptive and duplicitous in connection with friends. It might show that I'm beguiled easily by friends, by acquaintances. It could also be people that I may know in groups, clubs, or organizations. And the fact that it's intercepted makes it more, the energy is more taxing, it's more exasperating, the energy is more difficult to deal with. And I would say it may be harder to see because you're talking about interceptions can be about suppressed energy. So anyway, now also another thing to look at as far as like you're talking about aspects in a chart where people can be about deception, and if somebody has like their Neptune making an adverse aspect to their natal Mercury, this could be a person that may have a very hard time in telling the truth. It could be somebody, I wouldn't say pathological liar in a lot of cases, but it could be some difficulty in telling truth. It may not always be malicious. Let's say that somebody has their natal Mercury in Gemini and it makes an adverse aspect to their to their Neptune in their chart. Well, Gemini energy can often be about saying what one wants to hear as opposed to maybe sounding derogatory or saying something that might be truthful, that might be hurtful toward another person. So if somebody's got Mercury in Gemini and it makes an adverse aspect to their Neptune, it could just be somebody that might be deceiving others, not necessarily maliciously, but it could be because they simply don't want to hurt the other person's feelings in a lot of instances. But in other cases, it can indicate somebody that's very shifty and shrewd and being able, in some cases, it can indicate thievery in some isolated cases because Mercury is connected with thieves. And if you have it making an adverse aspect to Neptune, it adds deceptive energy to it. Gemini, of course, could be very shrewd and cunning. So also too, looking at, like, you could look at synastry in the charts as well and see in some cases where you may be dealing with somebody that might have some deceptive or duplicitous qualities. Let's say for example, you got your Sun or your Mercury making an adverse aspect to the other person's Neptune. This could be an aspect where you may not see that other person exceptionally clear. That person may be somewhat nebulous or unclear. They may be vague, and they could also be, in some cases, deceptive and duplicitous. It could be also, too, when you look at this energy, I mean, let's say, especially if you have the Sun in Pisces, you might really have a hard time really seeing them figuratively, seeing their character, understanding their composition, because Pisces energy can be very blurry. It's blurry, it's unclear, it's nebulous. And if you have, let's say, the Sun or Mercury in Gemini making an adverse aspect to another person's Neptune, this could be something where you might be seeing double, figuratively speaking. You might be seeing two sides of a person, which might be causing some confusion in their character composition, in that other person's character composition, what their actual makeup is. And you might be very ambivalent, going back and forth in trying to decipher that. Now, there's also other, and as far as like you're talking about a thing like with something with betrayal, I mean, if somebody, you look at the 12th house as well, and malefics in the 12th house can sometimes indicate negative energy connected with betrayal. You look at, somebody with Saturn in the 12th house may encounter some difficulties through betrayal, through treachery, whether it may be by them or by other people. So there are, a number of things in the horoscope that you could see where there's aspects, elements, and placements that could be associated with deception, duplicity, and betrayal as well. And The thing about it is, now let's take another example. There's other aspects in a chart in synastry that I think would actually play a role in some deception, duplicity that may not necessarily involve Neptune. Let's take in a synastry chart that you have Mercury making an adverse aspect to another Saturn. Hold on a moment, people. Sorry about that, I'm back. But in this instance, the Saturn person may undermine the Mercury person's intellect, make them think they may not be as smart as they actually are. Let's say you have Mercury in Taurus in that example. Mercury in Taurus could be a person that might learn very methodically, very deliberately, maybe through things that are demonstrated visually. The Saturn person might criticize the Mercury person for that and make the person think that their intelligence is not as good as it actually is. So there are other elements to look at as well. Excuse me. As far as house rulers go, a couple that come to mind, obviously, if somebody has the ruler of the 12th house in the 3rd house, or the ruler of the 3rd house in the 12th house, there might be a propensity toward deception and duplicity, even betrayal. I would say, well, more deception, duplicity in there, because you're talking about the 3rd house is connected with speech. And it could be a person that just may simply have a hard time telling people what they want to hear, or they might have some issue with telling the truth consistently for whatever reason. But it could also be a person that could be rather gullible and be easily influenced. 12th house can be connected with deception. It can go both ways. And the 3rd house, of course, is communication. Now, another thing too is also transits can play a role, of course, as well. If something happens where you're having transit Neptune hit your 7th house, that could be an indicator that you might might experience some difficulty in illusion and confusion in matters with your relationships in general. Transit Neptune is hitting your 11th house, like I'm having right now. It could be you might be dealing with friends that are trying to beguile you or deceive you, or they may not be who you think they are. You might be over idealizing them. I would say, especially now that Neptune is in Pisces at this point in time. So those are some things to look at. And also, as far as synastry goes, you understand it's more than just about the aspects. It's where you could look and see where the other person's Neptune falls in your chart, and what house it falls in your chart. Let's say if you have someone's Neptune falls in your 1st house in your natal chart. Well, this could be somebody, and especially let's say if it conjuncts your ascendant on top of that. Well, this could be a person that the Neptune person might encourage the other person to be a little bit more deceptive or duplicitous, or encourage them toward some alcohol or drugs and things that can really dissolve the 1st house person's vitality. But it doesn't always necessarily, it's not always going to be that way. Conjunctions can go either way. If it happens, I mean, some cases the Neptune person may just help the 1st house person be more imaginative and idealistic and try to overlook the transgressions of others. The Neptune person might show a lot of compassionate energy toward that 1st house person. So those are some other ways that could manifest, and it could pan out. So that's basically what I wanted to get at. And if you're having, like, say, transit Neptune making an adverse aspect to your natal Mercury, you might be more prone at that time. There may be more proclivity to being deceived by people, and it's really important to look at the fine print, so to speak, and scrutinize things like if there's documents, and making sure you're seeing all the fine details in those things. So anyway, people. Well, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard saying, stay well.